I grew up in the Hill section, at that time known as the Lower Hill, on Quincy Avenue. And I think the uniqueness of the Hill section then was that it was diverse. We had friends that went to Chapel School, we had friends that went to James Madison School, friends that went to Audubon, which would have been the Upper Hill. Growing up, and I think this is part of the uniqueness of the Hill section at that time, was that we'd go across the streets and walk to school and pick up all our friends as we went along, and that became a very important part of being a Scrantonian, was those friendships. As I grew up, my mom, who was a registered nurse, was a stay-at-home mom, but then eventually became very involved in the Jewish community, as well as in being a volunteer for Red Cross. So she really planted the seeds of my involvement in the community. The Temple Israel of Scranton on Monroe Avenue was very integral for all of us in the family. I have a brother and a sister. The JCC, and most of the Jewish kids growing up, that's what we did. We did scouting either at Temple or at the JCC. We did after-school activities at those two places. Of course, we went to religious school 4 times a week. And so the volunteerism that I've embraced really is in my DNA. Growing up, particularly in the synagogue, we had 300 children in the Hebrew school. Today, we have maybe 10 if we're fortunate. So you can see the demographics have changed tremendously. Kids that I went to kindergarten with are my friends. They don't live here, but they're my friends. And everybody, even when you talk about social media, you talk about a telephone call, everyone speaks about the uniqueness of the friendships in Scranton. I have been honored and fortunate to have sat on the board of the Jewish Home, now known as Elon Skilled Nursing, the Jewish Family Services, the Jewish Federation of Northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm a past president of Temple Israel's Board of Directors, and I'm currently the president of the board of the Jewish Community Center in Scranton. So it's busy and it's wonderful, and it's a growth. My career, I'm a speech and language pathologist. I'm certified with the American Speech and Hearing Association, as well as the Pennsylvania Department of Education and Speech Correction. I have had the amazing opportunity to work with children from birth to adults through stroke. I came back, I actually left Scranton for a while. I went to school in Boston, came home, left again to substitute in Philadelphia, and Allied Services here came calling, and I thought this was a great chance to come home. So I came home to family and some friends, and I worked at Allied in their home health division, and actually they were just starting it, so I was the one and only at that time that was actually on the road. So I did that until the Scranton School District came calling. So I worked there for 17 years, retired from Scranton, then began private practice, but I was doing birth to 3 and home health and working with children who were just starting to have some signs of some delays. Left that to go to Marywood and had the great opportunity to be the liaison between the Department of Ed and the Department of Communication Disorders, and work with grad students who were doing their field experience in the schools. The colleagues and the professionals that I worked with were just so fabulous, and I think that many people, unfortunately here, don't realize the work that's being done behind the scenes. I think that there are challenges sometimes, particularly I think with people not understanding the restrictions of Judaism. Growing up among my friends in the Hill, they did because they saw that every day. As a matter of fact, I think one of my mom's favorite stories was that my brother was invited to a friend of his, a sleepover on a Friday night. Well, my brother had to be at junior congregation for Sabbath services on Saturday morning. And the sleepover was at Reverend Thompson's house. Now, he was the head of Westminster Presbyterian Church. And Reverend Thompson got up on Saturday morning and walked my brother over to Hebrew school. So, the challenge, and then someone met the challenge for us. We went to our friends' homes for Christmas. We helped decorate their trees. We made Easter baskets for our neighbors because there was like a cultural understanding. And so I think that helped with what may be the challenges. We were educating each other. We were learning about each other. Sometimes in school, that was very difficult because the school districts weren't focused that way. So while individual neighbors and friends understood, I think that was hard. So that's a challenge to having grown up. As an adult and getting more involved, then being in the Scranton School District, I was often the token and asked to please come into the classroom. Would you explain Hanukkah? Would you explain Passover? And so we did, and people were very open-minded about that. So again, we were meeting some of my challenges, I'll say. The rise of antisemitism has certainly affected the Jewish community. If you were to drive by Temple Israel on a given Sabbath and or a holiday or a special event, you will always see the presence of a police car and a policeman. That in itself is just so very, very different. It's different financially, but of course it's different in sometimes that feeling of like when you just park on the street and you see the policeman, you feel secure, but there's still that feeling of like, oh gosh. It has kept some people away. People are afraid to go to some of our activities still. Everything's very heartfelt. The community itself, as University of Scranton did a beautiful program for us after Tree of Life, after the shooting. The notes, at the time, I was the president of the board of Temple Israel. At the time, our neighbors, our non-Jewish neighbors, really rose to the occasion, wrote us beautiful notes. The priest at chapel sent us beautiful flowers, which are just heartfelt messages. We've pulled together. We've had to change some of the structures and the protocols of what we do. Well, I hope for Scranton that it continues to thrive. And I hope that people will see what opportunities there are here. I hope that people will not, while the heritage is very, very important, I can never deny that. But I really would love for people out there, not even in Scranton, to realize that this is such a wonderful place to raise children. I want them to realize that we are an academic community. We certainly are becoming a medical community. And it's so interesting because my friends that have come here for other reasons, they weren't born here, they think it's fabulous. Well, I want everybody to think it's fabulous. I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud of the fact that we have so many freedoms and that, this makes me a little teary, that my children have had amazing opportunities, as have my grandparents and my parents and my grandchildren. And I worry about that for my grandchildren. I worry about the leadership of the United States. And I worry about the lack of civility in many, many places. It's scary, and often we say, oh, what are our kids inheriting? What's going to happen? But it really is a question, and it's frightening. But I think with with education and with fortitude and with a good attitude, I think we're going to be okay. I want us to be okay, and I hope we'll be okay.
Our life's made of stories.